Wel, bore da I chi gyd a chroeso cynnes. Good morning and a warm welcome to you all. And when I say warm, it looks like it's going to be a hot one today. So I hope you have a glass of water and a window open. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to today's innovation event, an event that showcases innovation, especially innovation in regard to our educational transformations here in Wales, and in particular curriculum for Wales. Rydym yn ddiolchgar iawn i'r Athro Andy Penaluna. We are also very grateful to Professor Andy Penaluna for his excellent work in this area and for his support to the National Academy for Educational Leadership, and especially for his insight paper, Are We Playing to Avoid Losing when we should be playing to win? During today's session, you will hear from some of our educational leaders on how they are developing innovation in their organisations. So thank you to them in advance for coming along and sharing that with us. Felly, heb oedi pellach, without further delay, I'd like to pass to Nia Miles from the National Academy for Educational Leadership to get us started. Diolch, Nia.
Diolch, Tegwyn. Bore da pawb, so lovely to see so many of you here today. Many thanks for coming to our leading innovation event this morning. We're here today to discuss Professor Andy Penaluna's insight paper called Innovation in Welsh Educational Leadership. And we're going to be doing that through an in-conversation panel and guest speakers. We're also here today to share the experiences of 4 schools who have received the Innovation Pathway funding and how they've used this to develop leadership and to foster and maintain a true innovative culture. We're also here today to hear from you as leaders and what your views are on why innovation is so important. As one of the 5 professional standards for teaching and leadership in Welsh education, innovation is central to the development of working towards 2025, developing new techniques, seeking and extending best practice, and evaluating the impact of changes in practice. Therefore, providing these spaces for sharing, reflection, and professional dialogue is essential. In addition to this, innovation is a priority work stream area for the Leadership Academy, with our long-term vision being that educational leaders are able to foster and maintain a true innovative culture, one in which the traditional top-down structure is replaced with a culture of collaboration, where risk and failure are embraced rather than avoided, and where all staff are given the opportunity to learn, contribute, grow, and are active contributors to success. Our innovation pathway is an opportunity for schools and organisations to apply for funding from the National Academy to develop innovative practice and leadership. This funding has been used in a variety of ways, including to develop provision for head teachers, senior leaders, middle leaders, and aspiring leaders. It's also been accessed to develop programs that support system leadership, curriculum development, assessment, the 4 purposes, creativity, the asymmetric week, youth work, well-being programs, coaching programs, community focused work, and many more. A number of organisations that have initially received innovation funding have then progressed on to having their programs endorsed by the Leadership Academy. In addition to offering our Innovation Pathway funding, we have held our annual Innovation Series, an opportunity for leaders to come together, hear from professionals in the field of innovation, as well as voices from the profession in order to stimulate their thinking and practice. Our first series was co-constructed with Professor Andy Penaluna and was centred around creativity and entrepreneurship. Our second series was co-constructed with Larry Shulman and again was centred around leading change innovatively. And our third series, which we have held recently, was a collaboration with Apple on leading digital innovation. We are currently planning series number 4, and we will be releasing details of this later in the year. All our series aim to stimulate thinking, all our series aim to stimulate thinking leading to applications for funding, as well as to broaden our reach across Wales and the organisations we work with. I will now be handing you over to Jeremy Griffiths, one of our alumni associates, who will be facilitating the in-conversation. Thank you, Jeremy.
Diolch yn fawr, Nia. Thank you. Bore da pawb. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you today and to facilitate and to have this conversation. I can assure you it's not been scripted, so what you hear will come straight from our hearts and our beliefs. So I'll start, I think, if we can introduce ourselves. I'll introduce myself. My name's Jeremy. I'm a retired head teacher. So if I look healthy and young, that's probably why. I retired in September, and I've been working with a couple of universities, Bangor and Swansea, on various projects that I'm really, really enjoying, to be honest. So that's part of what I do. I also I've been an alumni. I've been part of cohort 1 of the academy, and I've had a fantastic experience. And the academy itself, being quite innovative, is taught me a lot, to be fair, over the years. So that's me. I'm going to ask Professor Emeritus Andy Penaluna to introduce himself now, just briefly.
Hi everyone, good morning. Nice to have you here. Basically, I've been working on educational development globally for the last 12, 15 years, including working for the UN, OECD, and the European Commission. And it's all been based on how we need to change education systems so that we can encourage innovation in our learning teams. By that, I mean school leaders, teachers, any educational leader, of course, to benefit the pupils.
Thanks, Andy. And if we could go to Matthew.
Hello, I'm Matthew O'Brien. I'm head teacher at Birchgrove Primary School in Swansea. I haven't retired, and that's why I'm looking far more tired than Jeremy is this morning. At least the sun is out, and it's a beautiful day here. It's a pleasure to be asked to be part of this innovation, not just the project originally, but to discuss it further, because the impact that it's had on not just our school, but hopefully the others that we've been involved with, the participation has been enormous. So thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Matthew. And I have apologies. We had invited Elaine Sharpling from the University of South Wales Trinity to be here today, but unfortunately yesterday she's had to apologise, having caught COVID. So she's not feeling too well. So Elaine and I worked together on an innovative project this last time. So I'll hopefully be able to step in and share with you some of the things that Elaine was going to share. And we may be joined, hopefully joined, by a gentleman called Steve Drowley from the Youth Service, but has not managed to get into the meeting yet. So let's see what happens. So if I can start, perhaps, Andy, this is about the paper that you've put together and that you've written for the Academy. And I like the title, Innovation in Welsh Educational Leadership. Are we playing not to lose when we should be playing to win? So perhaps we could start with you, and you could give us a bit of a background and a little bit about the intention and what the findings of your paper were.
Unmute first, sure. Well, first of all, as you say, the message is really in the title, that we are in a unique position here in Wales with successful futures. We're not the only ones. There's others around the world making similar changes, but this really is an opportunity to update and deliver what's needed. So if we think perhaps, and there's a focus on this in the paper, the sustainability agenda. Take away innovation from sustainability and what's left. The same could be said for the enterprise agenda. And we know that Graham Donaldson sort of made a big focus on that. And there's a good reason. And that's really, well, whilst work doesn't go away, jobs might be. So there's a lot more emphasis on self-learning, self-development and career opportunities as things change. Every report I read, whether it be World Economic Forum or from the university sector, emphasizes this need for innovation. And you can kind of back that up by saying, well, okay, what's happening to anything that's standard? Anything that is the norm and based on known facts becomes part of automation. So we need innovators who can see beyond just looking at the past. So that might require a very good leader who faces those challenges. And so the paper sort of brings attention to that. Within the new curriculum, we've got skills essential to the 4 purposes. And all the dialogues that are going on at the moment don't seem to be picking up on that very much, which is a bit of a shame because, clearly the skills that we're looking for are about creating value and developing value for others. So thinking about this value agenda perhaps needs a bit of a push. If I can give an example, practical example from the paper itself, in terms of educational development, if we only look to hindsight, the past knowledge, then that would fit very well with assessment strategies, for example, such as examinations and tests, where there's the notion of correctness. However, in a new education system, when things are changing, the world is changing so rapidly, new things come into play every day. They bring in new insights. How do we support learners to spot those insights and to bring them into their learning? To take that a step further, I also discuss foresight, which is when you take these insights, you put them together, a bit like a science fiction movie, and forecast the future. Good educational leaders don't play where the ball is now. They play where the ball will be, like a good sports person. So this is all part of a playing to win, is being able to judge where we are. So the other issue I've pulled up in the paper, or one of the other issues, is looking outside the school gates and actually being learning establishments. Now, there's a number of reports, one very specific one from the OECD, to say that this really isn't happening. And where it is happening in primary schools more than it is in secondaries. So if I were to push from one of my roles in the university sector, how does this connect to, say, the enterprise and sustainability agenda that's going on in universities, which are actually got quality alignment and everything now? Where is the Welsh education system joining the dots there? So the academy is well placed to develop this. So developing innovators who can adapt, see things differently, change when they need to, of course, seek out opportunities, look to the cutting edge stuff and actually bring it back to Welsh educational leaders so that we too can take advantage of this latest thinking.
Okay, brilliant. You mentioned about looking outside the gates. That does relate closely to the innovation standards, where it talks about seeking and extending best practice. So have you come across examples of schools that are actually looking outside of education to find what's happening there?
Well, I don't want to preempt what some of the people are going to say here, of course. But yes, there are plenty of examples. And when I go out to, I've been in, shall we say, a school in Pembrokeshire, where they've been looking at creativity and innovation. And every teacher has been able to support that by bringing in external people. Now, typically within a school, we may have a set of governors or somebody, I don't know, runs an advertising agency, which is all about persuasion. So how can their insights feed into the school? Well, I've seen examples of that particular one. And it's more a case of an open-mindedness to link and connect things from a school perspective and say, who can help us? Where is the expertise outside of those gates? So, I mean, that's just one example, and we've got plenty to share today.
Okay. And just following up on something else I've read in your paper, you talk about radical innovators and kind of standard innovators. For me, that's about the step change in terms of innovation versus what I would call continuous improvement. Is there a balance that's needed between the two?
I think so, but again, perhaps this is the role of the academy to spot those cutting edge things. So just to put some meat on the bones on that, as it were, small innovations can take place just by copying something, doing something new in your environment, trying something you haven't tried before that's been tried and tested elsewhere. Radical innovators will link and connect and make new things arise and unexpected. So radical innovation surprises. radical innovation brings something new to the table that hadn't been considered. So who better to sort of map that and support that than the Academy?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, Andy. We'll come back to you with some of the points in a second. But Matthew, as a head teacher, you're the person delivering innovative practices, on trying to encourage innovative practices in the school. Tell us about what you've been through.
And I think the starting point for us as a school is that we always try to be self-reflective and looking at what we can do to improve us. And it's working with others in the greater community, but actually looking what is beneficial for us in Birchgrove Primary School and the effect it has on our staff and pupils. We've tried to take a forward-thinking approach to middle leadership development, for example, in the school. And that's founded on collaborative working, but it's inclusive within its nature that encompasses the key components of the learning organisation. This has taken us a number of years to develop where we are now, but part of the innovation project we wanted to look at is driven by our core values within the school to be the best that you can be. But in essence, the project invited other schools to work with us to develop their middle leaders. We're utilising new and innovative ways of teaching strong, forward-thinking leadership, which is shaped and embrace the future educational policy and circular aspirations of not just of us in the locality, but also for Wales. I think given the centrality of the skills essential to the four purposes that is at the heart of the curriculum that we're trying to drive, I think it's vital the schools apply these to the staff, not just the pupils, because we do lots and lots of talking around what we want our pupils to look like, but have we got the staff working in our environment and to be not just healthy, confident individuals, but ambitious and capable learners. And I really like the things that Andy has said in this about enterprising and being creative contributors. How do we do this as leaders? I think professional learning within our school and what we try to share with others takes a high status. The schools that we work with are supported to develop their own areas of inquiry that is pertinent and contextually appropriate to their school, because schools will have a different context based on where they are, size, types of children that they've got, and developing a culture of inquiry and taking risks. I really like the terminology, the radical innovation, because when you're taking risks within your own school, when teachers can do that with their children, what's the worst that can happen? You try things, you've got to see if it makes an impact. We've done many things in the school and we try to share with others, and if it doesn't work, okay, stop, try something else. You don't tell a child to carry on with something they're struggling with. So we do this as adults. The school's learning organisation framework, we use that effectively to evaluate practice and identify development areas for our own school. And the project would support and develop middle leaders to glean information from first-hand experiences and deepen understanding of their own schools. What we try to do with the project that we've been involved with is allowing flexibility so that participants who are involved are able to consider the specific needs of their own setting in relation to achieving high standards, obviously striving for excellence, but securing equity for all. And that, again, is staff and children. I think what we've enjoyed, and I think there's been excellent feedback from the schools we've worked with, is that sharing practical, effective ways of involving middle leaders in the process that secures accurate and reliable self-evaluation, and also understanding their position and role in driving school improvement. What I think has been very beneficial is sharing the first-hand experiences as a head teacher, what we actually have to do in a school. And schools are different, but there are certain things that we all have accountability for. And I think the title of, we're playing not to lose when we should be playing to win, I thought that was fantastic, because you feel that there's a lot, what do you try not to lose? And how do you strive to move forward? And I think we're looking at sharing practical, effective ways of involving middle leaders in this process so that they can secure accurate and reliable self-evaluation. and also understanding their position in the role of driving school improvement. With this, and looking at not just driving improvement, but leadership skills and capability to actualise change and transformation within schools. Middle leaders, we hope and what we encourage, are ambitious and innovative in their school-based actions. And the support they receive from us, we hope, enables them to be reflective and provide professional development and dialogue needed at this crucial stage of school leadership. We hear a lot about what, for example, we be coming from Welsh Government or consortia about school improvement and leadership. What we try to offer is school-based practical advice and an open forum that staff can talk and share practice, because we can all learn things from other people. So that's basically the starting point of where we are and how we hope to develop it over the next so many years.
Well, that sounds really really impressive, and what I'm hearing, of course, is that you're developing a culture within the school and within where it's a no blame approach and so on. Do you think that culture has helped schools like yours and other schools cope better with things like the pandemic? Because there's a huge, I think, Andy, you used the term VUCA, V-U-C-A, like an unexpected change. Has that culture and that thinking in your school helped you to address the COVID pandemic, for instance?
I think it has, because we started some of these things 3 or 4 years ago when we were looking at the culture of inquiry in school, and staff felt they were looking, and whether there are any, but we felt they were actually positives to the pandemic, the things that we looked at in the school. A main example of that was when Jeremy Miles told us we could change the starting and closing times for bringing the children into school and things. But we found, for an example of that, how calming the influence was on children being staggered into schools, and the way we looked at the timetable. So as a result of that, during the pandemic, we went out to consultation to change towards an asymmetric week, where we've changed the timings of the whole school. So I think that's centrally part of the improvement that we've made. The one thing everybody will say is, have we got enough time? We've never got enough time, but being creative, we wanted to make sure that we did create time, because we got to the point, if we wanted to develop a culture of inquiry, my understanding as a leader, we've got staff with families, we've got their own lives outside, we're looking at well-being and workload. We had to create an atmosphere within the school that time was given to develop a culture of inquiry and improvement. So actually, in the last, I'd say, criticised to say it, but in the last year, we've moved forward dramatically in the culture of when schools were often finding it difficult just to teach the children. There was confidence within staff to do things and continue to move forward. So the asymmetric week for us, the organisation that we've done based on professional learning, has had an enormous impact in our school.
Brilliant. And time, of course, is one of the 4 transversal themes of the SLO model, and therefore you've done something really innovative to fund. Interested to hear you say that the COVID pandemic could be seen for some people as an opportunity. And I think from my experience of working with the industry, when funding is tight, for instance, and yeah, I hear this in schools all the time, that we haven't got enough money to do something. Actually, when funding is reduced, it makes you look at what you're doing and perhaps think innovatively about how you're doing it. So it's not about necessarily reducing the service, the standard of what you provide, but it's about looking at how you provide that in a more cost-effective way. And time, of course, is a big issue that all schools talk about. So congratulations, well done on that. I'm just going to move on, and I'm conscious that Elaine isn't here, so forgive me if you're hearing my voice a little bit further, but Elaine and I have attended all of the Innovation Series workshops. It was great to see Elaine, she's the head of ITE in Trinity, or certainly will be up until the end of this September, when she moves into more research work. And she and I thought, well, we'll get together as a HEIs, myself from Bangor University and her from Trinity, and put in a bid to look at not pedagogy per se. And of course, the standards talk about the standard for innovation is about moving pedagogy forward. So we wanted to look at andragogy, which is adult learning coming from universities. And this would affect the National Academy as well. Our findings, hopefully, will influence the way that the Academy delivers. So we looked at it from two different perspectives. In Bangor, we did some research and worked on how to engage students and adult learners. And of course, with some of the principles of andragogy are that adult learners come with experience. And I know, Andy, you talk a little bit about having to unlearn some of the things that you have become almost habitual. So it's about adults coming with some experience, adults usually having some real motive or real life problem. And I use the word problem not as a negative, but as a positive opportunity for change. And adults obviously have that motivation to want to learn. So we looked at those factors, and then we looked at what was happening in our universities, what we were engaging with or encountering ourselves in terms of professional learning for teachers. And we came up with a few things. And again, I won't go on for too long, but from the Bangor side, we looked at the engagement. So we looked at how we learn, how we want to learn as adults. And I don't know about you, but if I need to find out anything these days from an IT issue that I have or fixing my lawnmower, the go-to place for me is YouTube. Okay. And I'm very conscious now, having watched probably dozens, if not hundreds of YouTube how to learn. They go right through these YouTubes, right into academic clips. Which are the ones that engage me and engage others, which have got the most views and so on, and how could we do that? Because what we were getting, and I think what may have happened, is that we suddenly had to pick up what was termed blended learning. For a lot of people, that wasn't really blended, that was just online. And quite often that would be a PowerPoint with a voiceover. And sometimes a PowerPoint with a voiceover that particularly, wasn't engaging. It was reading the slides off the screen. Now, that certainly would switch me off. So we wanted to find new and innovative ways of delivering. And we looked at the technology that was available. We looked at what was best practice out there in terms of engaging adults. And we have gone with something called Camtasia and Snagit. And they're two pieces of software that aren't that expensive. There is a cost to them, certainly not hugely expensive, but allows you very easily to create top quality YouTube videos and engagement and questionnaires and polls all on the same screen. The individual can actually be superimposed on the screen, and it's really good fun actually to put these together. So for things like the National Masters, where we're lecturing to students on Saturdays, and occasionally they can't turn up and they want to then re-engage or engage for the first time with the materials that we've delivered, we are looking at how we can best put these together. So that was one side of our project. The second side, which they looked at in Trinity, was around how to get away from what Elaine called show and tell, i.e. in the reflective part of it, adults don't necessarily need to just show and tell. We want our trainee teachers, we want teachers like yourselves to be critically reflective of what you've heard, to challenge things, because actually not everything works for everybody in your context. And in terms of innovation, I think innovators need to have this critical view of the things that are put in front of them so that they can challenge them and actually make them better. Certainly, we had a saying in our school: if it ain't broke, break it. Pull it to pieces, have a look at it, explore what we're doing. Does it work? What does the evidence tell us? And then put it back together to best suit our context. So that's where we got to in terms of our experimentation, if you like. So I'm happy, and anybody who has any questions for us, if you'd like to put those in the chat, that would be great. And then we can put those questions to the panel. But while perhaps you're doing that, I'm going to come back to you, Andy. You've made a number of recommendations. I think there are 9 recommendations in all for the Academy, which is a significant amount. And you mentioned in number 1, for instance, about the Academy working closely with the middle tier. So I guess groups like HEIs, groups like Estyn and Quals Wales and so on. So how do you see the Academy being able to influence these different middle tier organisations to become and to accept innovation? I.e., you know, how is Estyn a no blame organisation, for instance? There you go. I'll put you right on the spot.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I see this the world over. Sometimes when you're looking for correctness, this goes back to the notion of you must do it right, you must do it this way. So where I think the Academy can really help is to inform Estyn and people at that level about what it means to be innovative. You know, going back to the whole thing of a role model, would you take on board a teacher or a head teacher who's telling you something, but they're not acting it? You know, it's sort of like it's a broken presentation because they're not actually influencing you in a positive way because of the way they role model. So if we look at bodies like this, what are they doing to be innovative? What are they changing? You know, how do they interface with, I don't know, pro-poor, the global goals? What are they doing to bring those things into play? The interdisciplinarity perhaps is a good one, because creativity doesn't sit in the depths of a subject. It sits where you interface and interlink, which is why the AOLEs were developed in the first place. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from bodies like that about how they are innovating. And I think, again, the Academy you know, can sort of crystallize that type of thinking.
I also think that you said when you're talking about Estyn, and it's schools having the confidence as well to show what you're doing is right for your school. Well, we termed a phrase within our school that we do things the Birch Grove way. And when we were visited by Estyn a couple of years ago, it was a message I put. We all understand as leaders the pre-meetings and what we tell them and what they're coming in as expectation to see. But staff were very confident that what we were doing within our school was right for our school.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to challenge when you're doing something. You've got a comprehension. You know you're producing standards that are very good because you want the children, but in an innovative way of how you develop it. And I think schools need to develop that confidence that it isn't a matter of just playing not to lose, as you said. It's doing what's right and how to win in your context, in your schools, because schools aren't the same. Not every school in Wales looks the same, acts the same. But if you do things within your school that is trying to be the best you can be for yourself, I think you can take that confidence to Estyn, because it's up to them then to come and ask, why aren't you? And it's very difficult for them to say it's not correct.
As a head teacher, Matthew, sorry, Andy, I'll come back to you. As a head teacher, Matthew, then does this way of working make your job easier? Because I'm sure there'll be lots of head teachers on this call who'll be going, but actually, I'm sure you'll tell us now, does it make your job easier? Yes.
It's difficult to say that sometimes when you're saying that you create a structure in the school to make your own job easier, but it has. The co-construction of how our middle leaders and how they develop the curriculum and the senior leadership team, the roles and responsibilities across the school have changed dramatically. But seeing the confidence people have got to move forward and to try things, and seeing their self-confidence is fantastic.
So Matthew, there's a question here in the chat from Claire. What changes would you say are happening on the ground? How has what you're doing influenced classroom practice?
The way developed the new curriculum for 2022. I think on the ground within our school, we've got a group of middle leaders who have transformed our curriculum. And what we are going to deliver in September, we are confident that it suits what we are trying to do. But I think what it has done at the beginning of the year, we started with a good idea what we wanted it to look like 3 or 4 years ago. We're in a position in September to try something. By the Christmas, it was the young and middle leaders within the school who came to me and said, this isn't what we want to do. So we scrapped it.
Wow.
And started again. And the foresight was still, we wanted the standards of literacy and numeracy to continue, but we wanted the children to have a broader perspective, and the transformation within the school now where our learning is led 100% by the children. But it needed those teachers to come back and actually say, but to take that risk, but actually to come to senior leadership and say, we don't think this is working in the classroom. And not have that worry to say, it isn't working, can we change it?
Well, yeah. And did you want to come in? I think I cut you off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got a hand raised there from Alison Williams as well, but recognition and reward. We've just heard from Matthew about recognition and reward for doing things this way. You asked me about middle bodies and things. Well, where do they demonstrate? For example, recognition and reward for skills essential to the 4 purposes, which are based on innovation and creating value for people.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Alison, good to see you.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, my camera isn't working, so I'll remain the mysterious lady behind the microphone.
Okay.
So apologies. I just wanted to say we've worked with Professor Penaluna in our school for a number of years, and just as a leader at the moment, I'm probably feeling the most excited about the curriculum because of the way, as Matthew has said, it's about developing, isn't it, that vision with your staff. But for me at the moment, it's having the confidence, as Matthew said, stick to what you know is working for your learners. But I will say Andy has been instrumental in making us hold that nerve of when you're hearing other things and seeing all these emails coming through about what other people are perceiving the curriculum to be. It's holding your nerve and knowing your children well and seeing that through. And again, the skills essential to the 4 purposes, I think that's the part we need to be sharing far more across Wales, because that's the part of the curriculum that seems to be people are missing. And if you look across those skills, that is essentially what we're making our curriculum about in school. But I just wanted to say massive thank you to Andy, because he has really helped shape our vision, and the way he himself has helped me hold my nerve. But also it's really hard, isn't it, to get your thoughts across at the moment to all your staff and across your clusters and things like that. But yeah, I think just a massive thank you to you, Andy.
Diolch yn fawr, Alison. You're embarrassing him. Look, you're embarrassing him. I can see he's gone red there. But thank you for those lovely comments. And I love that phrase, hold your nerve, because ultimately that's what we need to do. And it's easier said than done, because there are lots of different pressures. I suppose I'm not calling you old, Matthew, but you know, when you get to retirement like me, you tend to hold your nerve probably better than you do if you're a younger person. But you really have got to stick with your values and your principles and listen to what the staff are telling you from the shop floor, I think. So thanks, Alison. That's a really great comment. And I think that answers the comment as well that's in the chat around inconsistency in Estyn teams, which has been there and will always be there, because they're different people. So that's something that we have to do. We hold our nerve. We know why we're doing what we're doing, because it forms part of our values, our principles, our ethos in our school. And you know, at the end of the day, Estyn will come in, like it or lump it, but you know what you're doing is good for your school. I'm going to finish Andy, you've got about 3 or 4 minutes. I just want you to share with us the international perspective. I know we looked at the Entrecomp framework. How does Wales compare with other international jurisdictions? Okay,
well, again, that's a big question for the time, but if I were to say that the Odricomp framework, first of all, was looked at in phase 1, and I don't think we had a teacher, about 400 teachers at the time, who actually disagreed with what's in there in terms of competency development. So for those who've not seen it, you've got things like creativity and visioning skills, as well as solving problems and being ethical and so on and so forth. So that model sort of helped a lot. We've just completed a 56-country appraisal of teacher training in that, and the positivity from the teachers is absolutely phenomenal. The key areas they found was that if you're doing something that's implementable, you know how to do it, and there's a way of doing it, it's the right way of doing things, that takes a different type of evaluation than something that's innovative. Now, the innovation will surprise, it will move to the changes that are occurring at the time. And if educators can embrace that, if leaders and those who are evaluating us can embrace that, then it's going to make a significant interest, take up a significant interest, but also help our learners in a world where, the state of the planet is absolutely critical. We need people to think, and I've seen that with the work of the UN. And we talk about unlearning. I mean, I was a visiting professor at the University of Cairo, and what those young people can do without any education, the way they can take natural resources, work with them, help their communities. A lot of unlearning about our own education system took place from learning from children. In my own learning environment, learning from alumni. And again, I think, for example, I worked in 7 countries in the Balkans, developing their curriculum, and set up a national curriculum in North Macedonia. Listening to the pupils who've been through that has been so informing. Yeah. 5 years on, they've just had a review in North Macedonia. And the things we're talking about here today have been central, especially the working outside. We found the biggest thing that made a difference in their country was the ability of the school to volunteer themselves to outside bodies and agencies to bring them in to get the school to help perhaps just the local community. So there's lots of lessons there. But the primary one, I think, is that we need to recognize and reward the people who are making progress. And that's why in the recommendations, I've tried to sort of see across the piece.
Brilliant. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Just a very brief point. I promise I'll keep it brief. It's using the things that we've got in place within the school, like performance management, the leaders to use that as a tool to be innovative, because the standards are telling us to use it with your governors. Because if you're trialing something, it doesn't mean you've got to tick the box for it all to be perfect at the end.
No.
Get the governors on board to support it and use outside expertise within it. So I think some of the things within the standards of leadership for leaders are there to help us.
Brilliant. Ga I ddweud diolch yn fawr iawn I Matthew and Andrew. Can I just say a massive thank you to Matthew and to Andrew for your insight this morning and your foresight looking forward. But we will finish this session now. There's going to be a 5-minute break, comfort break. And then at 10:20, if you can come back, that's only 4 minutes, so perhaps 10:21 near. If you can come back and we will hear from other practitioners who've been involved in innovative projects. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Stay online, just turn your cameras off. Thank you. See you in 5.
Now for the next section of our event, our Voices from the Field section. And we will have 4 leaders from different schools across Wales sharing their experience of receiving the innovation funding and how they've implemented that in their schools. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Catrin Coulthard, head teacher from Ysgol Gynradd Calon y Cymoedd in Bridgend. Over to you, Catrin.
Forgot to unmute then. Diolch yn fawr. Bore da. Ein prosiect ni yn yr ysgol oedd arloesi wrth arwain sgiliau sydd yn hanfodol i'r 4 diben ar draws y meysydd dysgu. Hoffwn ddechrau trwy gybwll ta'r man cychwyn oedd mynychu gweithlu arloesi trwy'r Academi Arweinyddiaeth. Roedd y sesiynau yn eich sbardino fel arweinwyr i ymchwilio datblygu syniadau i ddatblygu cwricwlwm i Gymru ac i feddwl am arferion arloesi. Gofynnwyd cwestiynau i wneud i chi feddwl beth yw arloesi o fewn eich sefydliad a beth yw arweinyddiaeth dda. Arweinyddodd hwn i ni feddwl sut i ddatblygu ein harweinwyr ymhellach. Yn dilyn y sesiynau cafwyd y cyfle i drafod y cais cymeradwyo. Gwelais i hwn fel cyfle datblygu staff i hunan wella a datblygu yn broffesiynol. Yn fy marn i, mae'n wraidd i lwyddiant. Trwy ddatblygiad proffesiynol, mae'n sicrhau fod ein hymarferwyr yn myfyrio ar eu haddysgeg. Yn ogystal â sgiliau arwain sy'n arwain at gynnig y cyfleoedd gorau i ddatblygu ein dysgwyr yn ddysgwyr gydol oes. Bwriad y prosiect oedd ysbrydoli arweinwyr i gyfoethogi bywydau plant a phobl ifanc Cymru, helpu nhw i ddatblygu fel dysgwyr galluog a uchelgeisiol, unigolion iach ac hyderus, cyfranwyr mentrus a chreadigol sydd yn egwyddorol a gwybodus. Ond ni all arweinwyr gwireddu hyn os nad ydyn deall beth yn union mae'r 4 diben yn olygu iddyn nhw. Gyda'r datblygiadau cyffroes cwricwlwm i Gymru, welon ni fel hwn fel blaenoriaeth. Wrth gynllunio'r raglen, ystyrion ni gwerthoedd yr Academi trwy fod yn gynhwysol a chydweithredol. Hynny yw bod pwyslais ar rhannu arfer dda roedd hwn yn hanfodol i'r prosiect. Ysbrydoli a symbolu, hyrwyddo datblygiad arweinyddiaeth gwych gyda ffocws ar y dyfodol a'r presennol heddiw hefyd. Ansawdd ac effaith, sicrhau fod arweinwyr yn deall y gwahaniaeth mae eu harweinyddiaeth nhw yn gwneud ar yr ysgol ac ar ein dysgwyr, ac meithrin galluogi arweinyddiaeth rigorol i fyny o fewn y system. Cynlluniwyd y raglen cychwynnol ar gyfer arweinwyr canol ac uwch, ond trwy ymchwilio a chynllunio'r raglen, broliwyd allan i holl staff ein hysgol cyn rhedeg y raglen yn allanol. Roedd yna 6 sesiwn i gyd gyda thasgau rhwng bob sesiwn a oedd yn arwain at y prosiect gorffenedig. O fewn y rhaglen, ffocysyn ni ar elfennau amrywiol ynghylch beth yw arweinyddiaeth effeithiol. Ffocyson ni ar atebolrwydd, arwain maes dysgu a phrofiad, ac arweiniodd hyn at bob maes dysgu a phrofiad yn cydweithio i greu gweledigaeth ei maes dysgu a creu cynllun gwella unigol. Edrychon ni ar arweinyddiaeth y safonau proffesiynol gyda ffocws ar cymryd cyfrifoldeb proffesiynol, arwain cydweithwyr prosiectau a rhaglenni a cefnogi rolau ffurfiol. Trwy'r raglen roedd hunan fyfyrio ac adlewyrchu ar ei harferion yn draphwysig. Defnyddio ni ddulliau hyfforddi a mentorau sicrhau fod yr arweinwyr yn cymryd perchnogaeth. Anogon i'r arweinwyr i ymchwilio i arweinyddiaeth arloesol sydd yn cwmpasu cymryd risg a threalu pethau newydd. Yn hytrach nag efelychu arweinwyr eraill, anogwyd bob arweinydd i ddatblygu meddylfryd a mantra bersonol a beth sydd yn gwneud arweinwydd effeithiol ac i fyfyrio ar arfer bersonol trwy gydol y prosiect. Cawson nhw hefyd cyfleoedd i ddysgu am arweinyddiaeth effeithiol ryngwladol ym myd addysg a thu hwnt. Roedd y prosiect wedi datblygu ein harweinwyr i gynllunio yn greadigol, i ddatblygu gweledigaeth ei maes dysgu a phrofiad gyda dealltwriaeth clir o'r 4 diben a'i hanfodion, i roi profiadau dilys i'r dysgwyr yn cynnwys holl rhanddeiliad yr ysgol ar y daith. Athrawes newydd gymhwyso oedd ein harweinydd maes dysgu a phrofi gwyddoniaeth a thechnoleg, a gaeth hi ati drefnu fod yr ysgol gyfan yn datblygu yr elfen o'r hyn sy'n bwysig wedi seilio ar fod yn ddysgwyr egwyddorol a gwybodus yn yr ardal allanol. Roedd hyn yn ffocws ar ein cynllun gwella, a defnyddiodd hi ei chreadigrwydd i greu prosiect oedd yn mynd i elwa ein dysgwyr. Aeth hi ati i ofyn i holl rhanddeiliad yr ysgol i fod yn chlwm gyda'r cynllunio prosiect, a oedd wedi gosod y sylfaen at berchnogaeth y prosiect. Gwerthusrwyd y gwaith, hunanfyfyriwyd a meddyliwyd am ffordd o ddatblygu ymhellach a gweithredu camau nesaf. Hyfforddi a mentora oedd y dulliau o'i hanog. Cynlluniodd ein harweinydd dynieithau prosiect ysgol gyfan ar Gymru trwy ddatblygu'r sgiliau 4 diben gyda ffocws ar wahanol agweddau ar draws yr ysgol i sicrhau trawstoriad o sgiliau a dilyniant. Datblygodd sgiliau arweinwyr ysgolion eraill yn y rhanbarth yn dilyn y rhaglen trwy hyfforddi a mentora a cymryd risg, ac roedden nhw wedi mynd wrthi i arwain prosiectau yn ysgolion wedi seilio ar y cynllun. Wrth ddylunio ein rhaglen, datblygwyd ein hymarferwyr i fod yn arweinwyr sydd wedi datblygu sgiliau o lunio a datblygu gweledigaeth a gwerthoedd ym meysydd dysgu a phrofiad ar lefel ysgol gyfan, dealltwriaeth o ysgolion fel sefydliadau sy'n dysgu, ar y magwedd genedlaethol at ddysgu trwy y maes dysgu a phrofiad, dealltwriaeth broffesiynol y safonau proffesiynol ar gyfer addysgu ac arweinyddiaeth, datblygu a gwireddu gwerthoedd y 4 diben ar sgiliau sy'n hanfodol ar draws y meysydd dysgu, cyfrannu a datblygu y meysydd dysgu trwy lais y disgybl a holl rhanddeiliad yr ysgol, cyfathrebu a chydweithio. Effaith hyn ar arweinyddiaeth oedd pwysigrwydd ar hunan fyfyrio, pwysigrwydd cymryd risg, pwysigrwydd rhoi amser i wreiddio prosiect o disgwyliadau a pwysigrwydd ar waith ymchwil. Roedd cynnwys holl rhanddeiliad yr ysgol gyda ffocws clir ar ddatblygu'r meysydd dysgu a phrofiad a datblygu dysgwyr gydol oes gyda llais yr ysgol ym mraidd. Datblygodd perchnogaeth gyda ffocws clir ar hunanwerthuso a sut mae'r dysgwr yn datblygu fod yn ddysgwr gydol oes gyda ffocws o ddatblygu'r sgiliau 4 diben a yn rhan o'n cynllun gwella. Rydym wedi mabwysiadu a chynnal diwylliant o'r Arloesi nawr trwy creu amgylchedd o ymchwil yn ein cymuned ysgol fel rhan o ddatblygiad proffesiynol. Ni wedi cynnwys holl rhanddeiliad yr ysgol yn rhan o'r daith a ni'n gweithio fel tîm, ond ni'n buddsoddi amser a cyllid ychwanegol trwy ymgeisio am grantiau mwyn gallu gwireddu hyn. Ni'n sicrhau bod datblygiad proffesiynol yn barhaus a bod yna cefnogaeth trwy hyfforddi a mentora a rhoi cyfleoedd i arweinwyr i arbrofi lles ein dysgwyr ac i fod yn greadigol. A dyna ein prosiect ni a diolch am wrando.
Diolch, Catrin. And I want to Jolo from St Helens Primary School in Swansea.
Yeah. Okay, good morning everybody. I'm Jolo from St Helens Primary School in Swansea. The project I've been leading on is focused on bringing successful foundation phase pedagogy into Key Stage 2. So to give you a brief outline of why we decided to bring this in, is the message for our new curriculum in Wales is that we should be taking successful foundation phase pedagogy into Key Stage 2 and be building upon the independence, experiences and opportunities that children have had to be independent learners when they were in foundation phase. The idea is that children will have a certain amount of time a week for opportunities to explore, practice, consolidate and refine skills completely independently. So enhanced revision in foundation phase, as is known, will become missions in Key Stage 2. When the funding had been awarded, we quickly got underway using some of the money to release myself and our Year 4 teacher to visit another school in Swansea to observe good practice and think about how we can make it work for us at St Helens. We also used the non-contact time that day back at school in the afternoon researching the approach too. Staff at the school we visited had recommended Castell training, and this led to the next phase of the project. With money from the grant, we bought the online Castell training, What Does Donaldson Look Like in Key Stage 2, and I completed the training myself. then followed up by delivering an ad session to all Key Stage 2 staff, and then teachers and TAs this week have had one-day training, completing the CAThdel training, making notes with their own ideas of how we can take it forward. These notes then will feed into our next meeting we have planned and booked in the diary for the last week of June. This meeting will be our time to plan together, make agreements and take it forward again. And after this meeting and pulling our ideas and agreements together, resources will be purchased and time given to arrange our classrooms, put up consistent displays and labels around our areas in our classrooms that it looks the same as the children go through Key Stage 2 at our school. The aim is that we are ready to hit the ground running in September, when we can spend the first few weeks back at school training the children how to use the areas, the resources, and how to become more independent learners. So how has the project developed leadership in our school? Well, as in Helens, it's always important that everyone is involved in the process of change and that everyone feels valued and is on board to make these changes and provide the very best provision for our pupils. This way of working inspires, empowers and excites everyone to achieve a shared goal. It has been great to see our younger teachers, particularly those who have been in foundation phase, either in another school or the ones that have been fresh out of teaching placement. We've even had 2 students that have completed the training, and they've been able to share their experiences and ideas. They have been priceless in this process, especially for me, who hasn't had that experience of teaching in foundation phase in recent years anyway. Staff visiting other schools has been beneficial. In-house training during an ad session, staff sharing experiences, and Key Stage 2 staff all undertaking the CAThdel training have all developed leadership in our school. As everyone is involved, we will be working together to support each other, but everyone will be leading this new approach in their own classrooms. So there's leadership at all levels, and this is so important for the success of this project. Whilst training this week, staff have provided notes with their ideas of how we can make it work for us in the St Helens way. This leadership from everyone has been amazing, and their ideas have been so creative and unique and much better than if I was just telling them what to do, that's for sure. How are we fostering and maintaining a true innovative culture? So we fostered and maintained a true innovative culture by valuing everyone's ideas. As I said earlier, this is incredibly important. Recognising people's strength and knowledge, particularly our younger members of staff and our students who are fresh out of the foundation phase and confident with this type of pedagogy. Everything has to be teamwork, an approach which comes natural to us at St Helens because we have such a fantastic team and we all want the very best for our children. Making sure we had clear set goals, dates booked in the diary, deadlines in place so that momentum is maintained was very important, as school, as you all know, is a very busy place, especially the summer term. We haven't actually got the project up and running as yet, but we put it in the groundwork at the moment, and the plan is to start with children in September. But even then, we will be trialling things and tweaking as we go, and most definitely learning from our mistakes. Lastly, our mantra, a little bit cheesy, but we believe teamwork makes the dream work. And this isn't something I could have put in place and done on my own. If I had done, then it wouldn't have been half as good, that's for sure. So finally, innovation and change needs to involve everyone to ensure that everyone is on board, everyone has ownership of their own role in the project, so that the very best provision for our children is put in place. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jo. And next to Darryl John from Milford Haven School in West Wales.
Well, old habits die hard. I just popped an extra strong mint into my mouth, so hopefully you can all hear me and you can smell my minty fresh breath. I'm Darryl John. I'm the senior deputy teacher in Milford Haven School, a secondary school in West Wales. Our project outline, here we go, it works. Was to enhance subject leaders' creativity, because we wanted to make the learner experience as positive and engaging as possible, in line with improving the knowledge, understanding, and knowledge, skills, and experiences of pupils as part of the new curriculum. And we hope then that by having more positive and engaging lessons, pupils will be more motivated, it'll increase engagement, and hopefully as a result raise attainment, which is still something that we're judged against at the end of Key Stage 4 especially. So my main aim, and I will be seeking, this is one of my main aims at the start of the project, but it's still an aim of mine, is to model and grow learning leadership so that our teams around the school, our AOLEs, can collaborate and establish that culture of inquiry, innovation, and exploration. So that was the kind of crux of the project. There we are, lovely. And with further background, really, we did restructure our timetable to be asymmetric. Okay, so every other fortnight we have a CPD Friday, and that was a big support in setting up the project, as well as when I came in 2018, and in 2017 our school was put into significant improvement, and leadership was one of the big kind of recommendations that we had to address. So, you know, we went from about 12 or 13 heads of department to 6 directors of AOLEs, and I think that was, you know, obviously we chose who we felt were the strongest and the most would be the most effective. So we reduced the number of leaders and then put a lot of training into those leaders to make them as effective as we could. So, and also, yeah, so we were in significant improvement. So obviously that meant that we wanted everybody to be consistent. And I know that was mentioned earlier on in the talk today about developing consistency. And so in this creating an innovative culture, we had to wait until they were all working at the same level, or they're certainly doing the same things as well as they could at that point. Obviously, I had some that were very strong in teaching and learning, others very strong in looking at tracking and monitoring things. So we had to upskill them all to that same standard before we could really bring this in. And you know, so this was the next step for us here. So bottom left, here we are. So project development. How was the project developed? So, you know, the big aim at the start was to promote creativity and innovation in schemes of learning. So what we did was we created more time for subject leaders or our directors to have more autonomy of their CPD. Each of them had their own kind of AOLE improvement plan. And so specific areas that they'd seen from their own lesson observations and work scrutiny prior to this. So you know, they had areas that were specific to them to really improve. We created a budget, you know, for subject leaders, and that allowed them to, you know, increase their autonomy with choosing their new resources. And again, we had to remove them originally because we were in serious financial difficulty, and so everything had to go through SLT. And it was, you know, significant improvement does sharpen up some practices, but it also restricts a lot of kind of innovation as well. So we brought that back in as part of this project to really, you know, to really boost our innovation as well on that. And it also prompted us to hold off-site leadership days for SLT, for subject leaders, and then in the second year as for heads of house as well. And it also helped us continue our MPEP project into year 2, choosing a different AOLE. And if the funding is here again next year, we'll use it again for a third AOLE. So in terms of maintaining this culture, I'll click on this one here. Obviously, we're continuing to promote creativity and schemes of learning. We want our lessons, part of our lesson observations, part of our coaching culture that we've got here is about you know, our learners engaged, our learners inspired, and those kind of words that we use. It's a big part of creativity is in our school, our new curriculum vision and our new curriculum hook. So we've used those words in that as an anchor at the end of a scheme of learning or at the end of a lesson, at the end of a school day, you know, our teachers, you know, living up to our vision, that the budget's continuing. What we've discovered is that some teachers are more kind of creative than others. So, you know, we've done a lot of work on talent spotting. So, and you know, bringing those, you know, effective teachers, those creative teachers, innovative teachers to share their the ideas that we've seen in weekly teaching and learning briefings that we hold every week as well, weekly. And that's been really effective, and that's prompted teachers to, you know, get in contact with others and to discuss, you know, those ideas, share those ideas out as well. And we've continued and will continue to kind of teach innovation strategies explicitly to staff in our CPD as well. So, you know, I've put that the progression model for lifelong learning there because, you know, at the start, you know, with our directors, we had to really support them, and there was a lot of input from us. You know, we need you to do this with your teams, we need to do this with your teams, and as we've moved slowly through the innovation project, as well as our own training that we had in place already, I'd say with lots of them now, all our directors are taking full responsibility now, and especially with their autonomy and increasing their complexity and the novelty factor. So there's been a lot of improvements there, and we're obviously continuing on this kind of growth model, if you like, and we'll hopefully see some experts come through. I mean, 2 of them, as it happens, have been promoted to senior leadership team in the last year. So that based on the work they've done through this work, on that one. So it's a really positive effect on it. To finish, I will go to leadership discoveries, because it's that, like, there's lots of positives on there, and our subject leaders are thriving on having more autonomy. And I've mentioned the talent spotting there, and I've just mentioned about the model for lifelong learning. But I wanted to zoom in on we've invested in the Entrecomp model as well, specifically working with teams to create their own vision and turning the ideas and opportunities, petals, into action. And there were quite a few in that model that staff have really resonated with, and been really pleased to see that they like to see an international model. It's not just me saying, CPD is yours, go for it. They see it as a bigger picture, which I think they've really appreciated. And of course, then that motivation factor has really come through, and I think that they mirror a lot of Pink's principles, but being motivated by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so I've tried along the way to keep them involved in why we're doing, why you're having that the extra time, why I'm giving it to you, why it's important that you plan it. So in those sense, I mean, I look back when I was asked to produce a digital poster, I thought to myself, well, how have I been creative? How have I been innovative? Because you feel like this has just become good practice, I think, as in the leadership in our school. But even promoting creativity with our middle leaders to disseminate to our teachers was a creative, the pupils are being more creative. I think developing our directors first and allowing them to select the strategies from a wider PowerPoint that I created, or wider range of strategies that I shared with them, was a creative start, because it allowed them to pick ones that they knew would work well in their own AOLEs. And I think that being more creative with how we deliver CPD with our teams, rather than it being from the top down, we've allowed a lot more reviews with that as well. So staff are having a lot more input in what they would like, and delivered to all staff or delivered by your AOLEs. And so we've got a lot more kind of freedom and a lot more choice with that as well, for them to develop their own skills that they feel they require as well. And of course, we've been creative with our budget as well. So we do feel that in looking back in hindsight, what I now consider good practice has actually been creative and in some ways innovative, but also I think models that could be done in any school, with thought and with some kind of careful planning prior to it. I'll stop there and stop sharing. Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Daryl. And finally then on to Andrew Keegan and Louise Davis from Pontllew Primary in Swansea.
So I'm Louise Davis and I'm a Year 1 teacher in Pontllew Primary School in Swansea. My current leadership roles are that I'm still currently Foundation Phase Lead, and I'm also responsible for the health and wellbeing area of learning in our school. This is my colleague, Andrew Keegan. Andrew has a TLR for curriculum and for assessment. And Andrew's also responsible for the mathematics and numeracy area of learning. So if I begin by just telling you a bit about our project. For myself and Andrew, this is the first sort of research project we've really undertaken in our school. And due to that, we applied for and we were accepted onto a course run by University of Wales, Trinity St David, which is Introduction to Professional Inquiry. And we found it really useful because over the course of the year, we attended 5 workshops, which have kind of broken down sort of the process of research and inquiry, and we've had support then from the tutors along the way as well. So the first thing that we did was we identified a focus, a need for development in our school, and as you can see on the screen, we identified spelling as a need. The reason for this really was because although spelling's been taken over nicely in our school over the years, we found and our colleagues found that the children aren't retaining the spelling of high frequency words, and that they weren't using them accurately in their independent writing as well. As a school, we've also taken a bit of an interest in retrieval practice, and we've had various ad sessions on it. So we decided to marry the two up and to see where the retrieval practice could have a positive impact on spelling. So myself and Andrew, first of all, we looked into previous research that had been done on both spelling and retrieval practice. And then we also looked at what activities we could use that would lend themselves nicely, not only to spelling, but also that could be used in both a year 1 and in a year 4 class. The first thing we did then was we did a baseline assessment with the children where they had to spell a specific list of high frequency words. And we also did a questionnaire with them just to kind of get an insight really into what their feelings are towards spelling and their confidence levels and whether they enjoy spelling. We spent then about 6 weeks actually on the intervention activities. And then following that, then we repeated the assessment and the questionnaire. And our findings showed they were really positive, to be honest. Our assessment showed that almost all of the pupils had increased in their score. Lots of the pupils had increased quite significantly in their scores, particularly in year 1. And in fact, across the 2 classes, there was only 1 pupil who didn't increase in their score, and there were external factors there that we had to take into consideration as well. In regards to the questionnaire, there was also a huge improvement there. The children felt that they enjoyed spelling more, they felt more confident in spelling. So we're really pleased with our findings. So for us now, our next steps would be to sort of delve more deeply into what we found out. And at the moment, we're in the process of writing a report about our research and our findings, which we can then share with our school and with the wider community. And then for us, obviously, then we need to speak as a staff and work as a school to think about how our research will influence our further teaching of spelling in the future. Obviously, we have found it's made a positive difference, and so along with our languages lead and with our colleagues, we need to consider now how we can adapt our teaching in the future then to hopefully have a positive change across the school.
Okay. So in terms of developing leadership, obviously we set out with this project initially as a research project, but kind of having the funding from the academy made us focus also on leadership as well, which was actually a really big part of the project. Actually, running the project itself, once it got going, was actually quite straightforward, but getting to that starting point was actually quite a long road. And you can see from our leadership discoveries, there were a lot of things that other people actually who've already spoken today have impacted our project. You know, things getting in the way, timetabling and structuring things took an unnecessarily long amount of time. And time is something that's come up in many conversations to do with leadership. And actually the funding from the academy was really vital to us, because obviously with Louise being in the foundation phase and myself being up in year 4, our paths don't always cross. So being able to get us in the same space at the same time was really vital to make sure that we could make the project run as smoothly as possible. And we wanted to create a really robust piece of research, and that wasn't going to happen without just being able to work together at the same time. Something else that Louise mentioned, obviously, in her introduction was neither of us are in a leadership position involved with literacy. So something that was really important was developing the way that we kind of work with other leaders around the school, so that we are able to have an impact in other areas of the school that aren't just our own remit. We're able to work elsewhere. And I think that's really important look into the future, because we need to kind of get out of our comfort zones a little bit and start trying to have an impact in other areas of the school to support our colleagues. I think it's taken that shift away from one person being in charge of every aspect of a subject or an area of learning, and really kind of working much more as a team. So if somebody's got a good idea, then running with it. So moving on to being fostering an innovative culture. Obviously, we've really enjoyed working in a much more formal and professional way of inquiry, rather than just giving something a go in a classroom and seeing what happens. We really wanted to make sure that we, as I said, created a really robust piece of research which can be shared, and not just in our school, but in the wider educational community. So what we want to do is continue developing this within our whole school. So we feel we're in a position, myself and Louise, to be able to support other staff in the school now to set off down their own inquiry journeys themselves. And that's really what we want to do. And we want to start implementing other things that we've learned. You know, there's no point in putting research into place and getting really positive outcomes if you're not going to then use that information to better school improvement. Other things we'd like to do is think into the future. It's very easy to do one thing and then sit back and go, well, that was really good, but we don't want to do it anymore. Actually, it's been a really positive experience for us. We want to move forward and develop our staff so that they can, you know, start researching themselves beyond, like I said, just having a go at something. And, you know, even as the mathematics coordinator, I'd be delighted if one of my colleagues came to me and said, I've got this really good idea for something that I think would really help with maths, because it shows me that our staff and our colleagues are thinking about other areas of learning that they are interested in and feel confident in themselves that they are able to actually have a really positive impact on school development. So yeah, overall, it's been a really, really positive experience doing this research, and I'm really looking forward to what next year brings. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. I'm going to hand now back over to Jeremy, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was fantastic, Andrew. And my thanks to everybody, to Catherine, to Joe, to Daryl, and Louise. You've shared some really interesting projects that you've done. And what I'm hearing, I guess, is that you know, risk-taking and this culture, this no blame culture, where people are prepared to try. I'm hearing a lot about collaboration from the 4 groups, obviously relating to the curriculum in the main, which is where the focus needs to be. The new curriculum. Somebody said, you know, COVID was an opportunity for change. Well, the new curriculum is a fantastic opportunity to look at what we do, our pedagogy, and how we do it. I'm hearing that quality time and discussion is really important to address some of the problems, the issues, the projects, for want of a better word, that you found, and that the questioning of what you do, that self-reflection, is really, really vital. So that's been a fantastic insight into 4 schools' work there. What we're going to do now is go put you into breakout rooms till 11:10, and in those breakout rooms, what we want you to discuss really is, why is innovation important? That's 50 minutes has flown by just in our discussion. So I hope you've had a good opportunity for discussion, and this part of the morning really is about you, and it's about you asking questions and making comments. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm going to ask my colleagues to keep an eye on hands up. Please put your hand up if you want to come in, or if there's anything you'd like to put in the chat, then do that. But I'm going to start, I think, and I'm going to ask a question to Daryl, if Daryl's still there, and that is around the barriers that you might have found, particularly around individual members of staff. You know, our staff are all different. Were there any barriers, and if so, how did you change the thinking? How did you change the mindset of staff?
That came up in our group, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we spoke about time, and I think one of the biggest barriers. I mean, there are staff who are perhaps the kind of late responders, if you like. We've got early adopters, and you've got the ones at the other end then who wait and see if it works before they even try anything. So because it came from the directors rather than senior staff, you know, I work with directors work with their teams, and we use the CPD Friday training sessions, and of course we've benefited, haven't we, in the last few years from an extra inset day for the new curriculum. So again, we've kept that really like sacred to the AOLEs really. So because we gave time, I think that was you've got time this afternoon in your CPD session or in your twilight session to add creative and innovative strategies to your lesson plans for the lessons that you've just taught in the last few weeks, or the lessons you've got in your next scheme of learning.
Yeah.
So we directed the time, but we didn't direct which strategy particularly to use in that area. So that allowed the directors to take that responsibility, to work with their teams, knowing their teams well. But I think providing time was a key factor. So we didn't get that, I'm not doing any of that nonsense, because it's not nonsense. And you know, we talk about, you know, the new curriculum, as I said before, is skills, knowledge, and experiences. Well, you know, at the end of a lesson, you know, what was the learning experience like for the pupil, I've got that at the bottom of our school lesson plan performer, because if you're putting down, read this page and answer those questions, is it a positive learning experience? What else could they have done? How could they have accessed that knowledge? If I'm talking for 20 minutes in class, and then they write or whatever, or they do something with that knowledge or whatever, how could they have accessed that information more creatively than me talking about it? So, so that was how we didn't have a lot of pushback. In fact, we had a lot of support.
Brilliant.
Instead, because we gave time.
And I think you win over those players. They adopt it, as you say, and that kind of influences the rest of the. So your directors, you're a secondary school. Your directors are your middle leadership. Would you call them?
Yeah, subject leaders. Yeah, so they're in charge of the AOLEs. We've got
brilliant
6 of those, because there are 6 AOLEs.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So that's literally a really good example of leading from the middle as well, which has a massive impact. And I think lots of schools here would say that's true. Interestingly, I've just had something come in from Tim on the chat, and I wanted to bring you in anyway, Tim, because you made a really pertinent comment beforehand around, we've got to coordinate learning, not just in school. That's a small part of the day. So, Tim, would you like to come in and say a little bit more about that and ask your question? That would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I work with the Welsh Local Government Association. I'm a policy officer covering youth policy primarily. So in some respects, I might be able to sub for Steve, who's been unable to make it. Thanks. I mean, linking the both comments, the question and a comment linked together in some respects, really. I mean, I was commenting, I've been around a long time in our workshop, that we used to have things called education business partnerships. I don't know if colleagues remember, and they used to broker a lot of the engagement with outside organisations who bring some of their expert knowledge and skill into a school, which can be really effective in regards to particularly, school, if pupils are asking questions of the expert, they can 99 times out of 100 come back with an answer, whereas a teacher may have a broad brush knowledge of that area, might have to go away and research it, and all those sorts of things. So in the absence of those EBPs, and given the huge pressures generally, it's a mutual responsibility from those external organisations, which include public sector and private sector in there, but also from the school in contacting those, and how do we ensure that there's capacity there to enable that, because the enhancement to the opportunity for learning is huge.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. And speaking personally, as a head for many years, for over 10 years, I developed a relationship with Toyota in our neck of the woods, and we learned so much from working with industry. And at one time, it used to be there used to be funded places teacher into industry, and all those kind of things seem to have dried up. It may be something that Academy Wales, who look after public sector in the Welsh Government, kind of something that we should be looking to develop, and schools themselves looking to develop better links with industry and business.
I was reflecting as well, it can be far more challenging in rural areas than in urban areas, because if you haven't got the businesses around you, how do you bring them in? But I suppose we've got the technology today, haven't we, that we didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. So there are more opportunities now perhaps than there were then.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Thank you for that. That's a really good point. I'm just going to reflect for a second on the mantra that Joe made, and that was teamwork makes the dream work. And I like that. That's simple and memorable. A mantra that I have used with our staff or used with staff. It was about staff who worked on the school, not just in it. So staff who actually worked on the school, making those improvements rather than just coming into school and doing their day job, so to speak. Joe, I wonder if I could ask you then where you see this innovative, I mean, with the loss, if you like, of the phases, foundation phase and key stage 2, which was what you were looking at, this will be a seamless curriculum. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? No pressure.
Yeah, well, hopefully the children hopefully will be seamless, and the children will have all the opportunities they had in the foundation phase. They'll be independent. I think it, from the point of view of the project I've been working on, we needed a little less of the teacher, a little bit more of the pupils.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, there's another saying that if the teachers are working harder than the children, then there's something wrong, isn't there? The children need to be the ones that are working hard, not a spoon feeding them, and that's a point that I always remember. It says here, and I can't see this, but Lorraine has got her hand up. Lorraine, would you like to come in? Thanks, Lorraine.
Hi, sorry, I was just typing it away there, the answer. I was just going to answer your question really, Jeremy, before, and in the group we did talk about time being a major element, but we also talked about teams and how I found as a head, because I only started 18 months ago, I had to start with a new team, and putting the staff in teams seems to have such a bigger impact. So when somebody's working in isolation, it takes sort of longer, and they feel more confident working in a trio or a pair. So for next year, we're just buying in Ian Kelly, who you'll know, to do some training on coaching and mentoring, because I think that's really important, and the staff feel more empowered almost. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the other teacher's name. Was it Andrew in the group with me? He was talking about how he'd worked with the other member of staff on their project, and I do really think that's so powerful. So it's not just time, it's having somebody to bounce ideas off and feel like you're accountable with somebody else.
Absolutely, Lorraine. I've heard that come up quite a lot, isn't it, about people working together, because actually there's that synergy, there's that, you know, the greater power, people bouncing ideas off each other, and off people outside. And I think that's the point Tim was making, you know, looking outside of your school and finding out what's working, what's the best practice, but what then taking that and adapting it, the kind of innovation on a smaller scale, as opposed to the full research, finding something that you think is going to be really innovative for your school.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, I would fully agree with that. Is there anybody else off the panel or any of the teachers who've presented want to comment on that?
I think it was, it's where we say about developing time. I think it's really looking carefully at organising how we have meetings, what the professor drill is for. Are we having them for the sake of having them? Are we having, you know, it's looking at your timetable, giving people opportunity to work together in groups. I think Lorraine was spot on then in saying, you know, people work well talking, but seeing mutually beneficial reasons for doing it. And I think perhaps the bureaucracy sometimes around what we should or shouldn't do has got to be looked at in your setting. When are the best opportunities for people to work together collaboratively, share responsibilities, and find ways to move out of problems and looking positively. I think when staff see the reasons why things work and it's shared, it's very difficult not to come along.
I'll add to that, Matthew. Absolutely. I think without boring people and bringing up lean again, but in terms of time, what we've always tried to do is take waste out of the system, take the waste, the stuff that doesn't add value that we end up having to do. Some of it is essential, some of it is statutory, we have to do it, but there's a lot of stuff we do that we don't actually have to do. And if we can create that time then to be innovative or to, you know, add value to the pupils, they're learning the whole experience, then that's what we should be doing as school leaders. Sometimes as a school leader, it's about almost protecting the rest of the school and the staff from some of the stuff that comes across our doorstep through our email boxes. So I think that time element, if we value it, then we will find time to do it. That's the thing. If we value it and it adds value to what we're trying to do, then we will find the time, because that's what we've got to do. So any further questions? To offer a university view, alumni are an excellent way to find out how their learning has helped and what networks they're in. Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. That's great. Any further questions? Because or comments from anybody? I can't see any hands up, and there's nothing else in the chat. Well, In terms of time, and being somebody who is constantly told that I'm respectful of time, I'm going to hand over then to Mark Isherwood, who's going to close this session this morning. My thanks to everybody. It's been great and a privilege to do what I've done. Mark, you're going to finish now. And if we can, Mark, we'll finish a couple of minutes early to give people some free time.
We'll certainly try and do that, Jeremy. Diolch yn fawr iawn bawb. What an inspiring morning. Great examples of innovative thinking and action in practice. And importantly, the positive impact of creating a culture of innovation, creativity and pioneering new approaches. Really great to hear. Big thanks to our facilitator, Jeremy, voices from the field, Matthew, Catherine, Joe, Daryl, Andrew and Louise. In terms of next steps, we're pleased to announce that the availability of project funding to give leaders some of that important time and space to lead a digital innovation. So there's a focus, digital innovation. We have funding for up to 10 grants of £1,000 each, which could be used, for example, to provide leaders with time to engage with the Welsh Government digital professional learning journey self-evaluation tool, or time to access the designing digital services provision for third sector youth work organisations. Just a couple of examples, but it could be other. The grant application forms will be available tomorrow, and then deadlines for applications will be 15th of July, with projects to commence in the autumn term. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our colleague, Professor Andy Penaluna, for not only developing our first innovation workshop series back in 2020, but also now providing the evidence base and clarion call for innovation and creativity through his brilliant insight paper. We're fortunate indeed, aren't we, to work with someone who is both held in such high regard internationally, but also to be able to challenge our thinking and actions on a regular basis. The launch today is just the start of the conversation. This will be the catalyst for a national conversation on innovation and creativity. I commend the paper to you. We all need to read it and consider how we can respond to the recommendations. One thing I know for sure is that we'll be working with Andy and educational leaders to co-construct our 4th innovation series for next year. And most importantly, thank you to all the educational leaders. I know some have had to leave, but those that have joined us and participated this morning. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to innovate and, as importantly, support innovation amongst others, your colleagues. I'm going to leave you with 2 final thoughts. One from the late great Sir Ken Robinson, remembered for his brilliant TED Talks, Do Schools Kill Creativity? I say to leaders, if they ask me, how can I change the education system? Well, the first thing to recognize is that you are the system. If you change what you do, you are changing the system. There is much more room for innovation within the system as it is than very many people seem to realize. And the second and equally important and inspirational from Alison Williams this morning, hold your nerve. Hwyl fawr, take care. We hope to see you soon.